5 minutes because we haven't really talked about cities at all. I'm going to talk about threats, challenges, and opportunities in cities. So I think there are some aspects of climate change that are particularly relevant to cities. More intense storms and sea level rise, particularly in coastal cities, hotter average and nighttime temperatures, extended heat waves, and droughts. And there are attributes of urban systems that I think are going to compound these effects of climate change, and I'm going to call those urban multipliers. So in cities, we have high impervious cover, and the converse, we have low pervious cover, and this prevents infiltration, it promotes flooding, it causes flashy hydrographs that can be very damaging downstream. We also have the concentrated generation of waste heat and also pollutants like nutrients and hydrocarbons and salts, heavy metals, pesticides, pharmaceuticals. We also have interdependent infrastructure, our roads, our sewer systems, our electrical delivery systems, and we have the concentration of people and infrastructure often in vulnerable areas, so on coastlines, in low-lying areas, and there are socioeconomic disparities within cities that mean that the effects of climate change are not equally felt by everyone in the city. So I think that we can group the impacts of urban climate change into 4 categories: coastal impacts, storm impacts, heat-related impacts, including exacerbated urban heat islands, and droughts. And these are all going to have effects on biodiversity, also infrastructure, as well as human health. So what I want to talk about today are opportunities that I think we have in cities to use nature-based solutions to both adapt to and manage the effects of climate change. So I just want to highlight some examples of those. So increased tree canopy cover gets a lot of attention. Trees increase shading, they increase evaporative cooling, they can promote biodiversity and also carbon sequestration. Stormwater management structures include a whole host of things like ponds and managed wetlands, restored wetlands, rain gardens, bioswales, and the like. These can promote water storage and infiltration and reduce flooding. Green roofs can provide evaporative cooling. Managed species relocation is something that we do already in cities without even thinking about it. Urban foresters are already planting trees to deal with the fact that we have urban heat island effects in cities. And the Forest Service in the US, for instance, has been providing cities with tools to think about how to plant urban forests in the future to deal with the effects of climate change. Parks and open space provide water infiltration and storage. They reduce flooding. They also harbor biodiversity. And restored coastal protection is going to dissipate wave energy, attenuate storm wave heights, reduce storm surge, reduce erosion, and protect human settlements. I think it's important to recognize that all of these nature-based solutions have co-benefits. So there's been a lot of talk about co-benefits throughout all of the talks today. All of them have the potential to promote biodiversity. I think importantly in cities that many of the benefits have to do with human health, both physical health and mental health. We're seeing more and more research that suggests that green space in cities has important mental health benefits. There are also social benefits, so reduced crime, increased social cohesion that can arise from these nature-based solutions. And as I mentioned, for some of these, there are benefits to biodiversity. And depending on how we manage them and what kind of structure they have, those will be more or less. So I think this is my final slide. I just want to talk about some of the research opportunities that I think we have in cities. I think we have to think about issues at the intersection between costs and benefits, scale, and equity within the context of particular cities. So I just want to flesh that out a little bit. I think we need accurate cost-benefit analyses of these nature-based solutions. And often that means that we're comparing these solutions to what we could obtain with non-nature-based solutions, so gray infrastructure, or in combination with gray infrastructure. In evaluating costs, we have to think about installation, maintenance, and replacement costs, but we also have to think about the disservices. These are often ignored in ecosystem services analyses of nature-based solutions. So for instance, trees can be sources of both nutrient and air pollution depending on their configuration in cities, but most of the ecosystem services analyses ignore these disservices and only consider the benefits. In evaluating benefits, as I mentioned before, I think we need to consider co-benefits for things like biodiversity and human health and well-being. In terms of scale, I think we have to ask the question, does the scale of nature-based solution match the scale of the problems that are caused by climate change? So most nature-based solutions require land area, and land is at a premium in cities. So which nature-based solutions can be realistically implemented at scales that are large enough to allow for meaningful adaptation? We also have to consider issues of equity, whether the costs and benefits of nature-based solutions are being distributed equitably within cities. Poorer communities are often the most vulnerable to impacts of climate change, and yet nature-based solutions are often more common in wealthier neighborhoods in cities. And so finally, all of these are interacting within the context of individual cities that vary hugely across all sorts of axes. Axes of local climate, the age and type and distribution of existing gray infrastructure, the degree of development. So what are we talking about when we talk about a developing city versus a city that's in the developed world, and also the nature and magnitude of climate change threats that are being faced by cities.